That'll take it to YouTube. And then actually, I think it'll go. Oh. All right. So we are live. And I'm going to make sure that a video is popping up here. And I'm going to pull up chat on my phone. But hello, everyone watching future or right now. I think we have a couple viewers. I just can't see the preview, so I want to really be sure. Let me know in the chat if you can see this. Connect to streaming software to go live. I did. There we go. Okay, we're live. All right, we're being invaded already. You can see yourself in the camera there. Hey, Yusuf, how's it going? All right, so I'm gonna throw OBS corner here because I believe in it. And yeah, basically, we've been talking about doing one of these for a while, but my hopes is that we basically have a video game song that hopefully is relatable and generic enough to where we can walk through it, enjoy the mix. Folks coming from rock backgrounds, jazz backgrounds, anything where you have kind of a drum, bass, and something in the middle. And we'll talk about different ways to approach mixing, different ways that we can listen to the original and maybe make improvements towards what we'll find as a reference. And if you're watching this in the future, maybe this will be a great reference for folks who are new to mixing or just want to get some new techniques. I still can't figure out the most convenient way to view chat at the same time on my phone. So I'm going to try one more time here because I think let's see. Oh, Ro is live. Cool. And it also says I'm editing a music video, so I'm going to check because there's no music. But yeah, Sean, thank you so much for volunteering and signing yourself up for joining me on this, first of all.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here, happy to provide audio for you to work with. Excited to see what you come up with today.
So the first thing I think would be really helpful, because it'll stall, and also because I think it's helpful, is tell me about the Uriah song, both in terms of the game and then also just in terms of what got you to do the cover. It's the fact that it's
yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this was actually it was the July 2022 Pixel Mixers monthly contest. I forget what the theme was, but I was listening. It just happened to fit something, and I was listening to actually a jazz fusion band in Japan. They're called Jizu. And they specialize in this aggressive math rock fusion type of thing.
Very cool.
The piano player Kie Katagi, I think she's probably my favorite piano player in the world right now. She's insane. And I'm like, hang on, I want to try doing that in some way. And then I was like, what if I took Uriah, which is a very beautiful, it's how do I explain it? The region is very aquatic, lots of fluorescent colored plants type of thing. Very beautiful area. It's a slow 6/8 type of songs, like da 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 da, that kind of thing. And I was like, what if we made this fast and in 10/8? And speaking of 10/8, I messaged Yusuf if he wanted to play drums on this, and he was like, you got my attention with 10/8.
Interesting.
And then I also got Nico Mendoza on bass and Alejandro Espinosa on guitar. So I got the Berkeley Boys powerhouse trio right there. And so I'm just like, let me try doing this. And it's probably one of the most technically demanding arrangements I've ever written to date, but it turned out really well. Was really happy with it, and here we are.
That's awesome. And I think this is weird. This is very relatable, I think, to a lot of people in the scene now. Pixel Mixer contests every month, folks kind of get, I think, empowered to try something new. I always feel that way with with community albums. Whenever Game Grooves has a new community album, Pixel Mixers, of course. I'm sure OCR, Dwelling of Duels. So one thing that I think to start is really exciting, of course, is when I was starting VGM in like 2012 or 11 or whatever, um, it was rare that there were live drums, and I felt like you could almost mentally divide YouTube into like folks who were using live drums for rock, jazz, blues, whatever bass things, and then folks who were using Easy Drummer 1.0, which was like the thing. And like also the one or two times someone had live drums, we were just like, that drummer's gotta like whatever. Because like back then, of course, they would be the only ones who would buy up the interface, the microphones and stuff, just within our little online bubble. And nowadays, of course, there's tons of people seen who are using live drums, yourself included. Of course, Yusuf. There's people who are like kind of actively looking for live drummers over drum libraries, and then on the other side, drum libraries have gotten so freaking good that like the need to like have a live drummer gets kind of fuzzy. And like, I'll be honest, I would rather program my own drums than take drums.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, because
if it's what your workflow is good with,
it's what my workflow is good with. It's easier to mix, and that's more important to me than taking the risk. But like you said, it's about like the workflow and also tonally what you have. You know, not everyone has a $400 sampler of Superior Drummer 3 to like use for jazz stuff. And if we didn't have that, I think Allison would probably end up going with live drums, because, you know, a lot of the cheaper drum samplers out there are geared towards that very tight, recorded, pre-processed sound, like good drums and slate drums and fictive drums and so on. So what I thought would be cool to kind of kick off, even if this seems like painfully slow, is, you know, much like your nail the mixes and all these different kind of things, I want to like go one by one through like what it would be like if you passed this to your invisible extra collaborator, or if anyone in the audience, you know, if you pre-rendered all of your recordings and you were done tuning and you sent that out, what would that look like? And how do you go about mixing that? Or you just got all your collaborator parts, you know, just in general, what we're looking at. So I'm going to first of all play like a bit of track you sent me. It's labeled Unmasked. I swear I'm going to clear my throat like 600 more times and then we'll be. But let's listen back, and I'm going to bump the stop it there because we're going to listen to this a lot. Also, thank you again, everyone coming in. Good to see you, Mako. I'm not going to cough 601 times. Saria, good to see you. Doing well. We're walking through what it's like to mix. So let me do something I'm going to say a bunch throughout this stream. This is not a stream to destroy Sean or any of the wonderful people here. On the flip side, this is kind of and this isn't a roast or even like a retrospect of the old mix. I want to pretend like this almost doesn't exist, but we're lucky to have that reference. So my thoughts as someone who has not heard the original song probably more than once, maybe in passing, is jammy. It's nice. You've justified exactly all the parts in there very well, which I like. You know, there's guitars, drums, keyboards, and bass. Like, that is probably what you're going to hear on average as a band. And if you go to VGM Con, Magfest, what have you, that's usually like the instrumentation you see, which is really nice. One conversation that comes up a lot, and I'm sure it happens for you, Sean, is like, people, let me phrase this in a very good way. People talk up their track counts in a very braggy way that can remind me of other counts and stuff. And sometimes it is important. Don't feel like you only have 8 tracks, but also, do we need like 1,000 tracks to really make this good? If we can't make it sound pretty great with, you know, those 4 instruments, 5 instruments. So,
I fully agree with sometimes you only need like
mm,
a handful of instruments and you can cover every single part in the arrangement and the mix that you need to and without needing to go and kill your
mm,
computer in the process.
yes, and without getting on a tangent, one of my other big gripes people have is like, man, Sony Vegas is so slow for me. I was editing this video where I have like 7 of me on screen, that I recorded with my iPhone, and I don't get it. Sony Vegas is the problem, and it's like, no, this approach is very new for us to be slapping 4K iPhone super compressed H.265.
Oh,
Like, we weren't
on a
meant,
laptop.
yeah, on a laptop. We're not meant to do things this way, but there's no rule book on any of this. So no one's expected to magically know, oh, like, that's very intensive. It's actually simpler to just have one clip at a time. Or in music case, if you're fairly satisfied with your part, maybe you've backed up your recordings, you can print out your effects. And in fact, that's probably something we're going to end up doing quite a lot of. So, taking a look at the track, and this is yours. Again, I think you have a pretty great balance, and you can hear everything. That doesn't necessarily mean it's close to like one particular style yet. Maybe there's things that I would do differently, or we're going to do differently today, and we're going to talk about it differently. But what's really important is kind of like, we have a goal, you have reference bands in mind. And that really can make a difference. A lot of folks, especially younger kids, because I'm old now, they got their musical inspiration from YouTube, from TikTok, from sources that aren't necessarily conventional. And that's great. Follow those and see what influences those people are using as well. And why. Like, why do we want bass up front? Why do we want drummer perspective, or I'm literally going to end the stream? Like, what are these important different decisions, and like what benefits it? And try it out. It's all super subjective, but there are common like rules and practices from your favorites that can guide the way. What do I think about H.264 versus 6.5? If you can back up everything to 6.5, do it. If you're not color grading heavily anyway, you should edit everything in 6.4 if possible. I don't want to get too off topic with video, but that is a really, really big thing I can't help but recommend. Don't use H.265 if you don't have to, because it's just going to make your so Sean sent me the stems with a beautiful label here, so I'm going to brag about this first. We're going to drop it in, and I'm assuming it lines up with the unmastered, so I'm just going to kind of like leave that in a project.
It should. They should all be, I want to say it's 254, 258 long. Yeah. Yeah, they should all be the same length.
259.45.
Okay.
So,
okay.
I can't believe you just lied on a live. Just kidding.
Oh no. Yeah.
But yeah, so what you're looking at again is Cockroach Reaper, and we have all these tracks just dropped in. So this is not too dissimilar to how a lot of people start projects, but we're certainly not going to leave it this way, because we're going to make it organized, pretty, and then it's going to be all that much project. So going down the list, and with you here, this is going to be easier. We have Piano 1 and Piano 2. Are these left and rights of like one piano by chance? Or?
Nope, those are so I record with a digital piano, so those are MIDI instruments that I record and then I render it at a VST. So Piano 1 is its own instrument and Piano 2 is its own instrument, so they are two separate lines entirely.
Okay. So, and as we go through these, and this isn't necessarily how I would do this, we're on a stream and I'm talking out loud about every thing I click. What I'm going to do is, as we talk about what they are, I'm going to group them. And I'm grouping things basically by instrument group, from either a classical point of view or just like a texture point of view. So I'm not going to put like bass and drums in one thing. And when I say grouping, if you're really unfamiliar, and I can't emphasize this enough, stop and ask me every single question you possibly have. I am streaming for the questions, not for the successes. Hey, Giaco, good to see ya. So yeah, our next instrument here is lead guitar. And it looks like this is pre-recorded, actually, like pre-effected, like out of an amp or someone's...
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
When Alejandro sent me both with amp sims or amp effects already on them.
Cool.
So And I like the sound, so I'm like, I don't need to ask for dry. It sounds good for what it needs to be.
Sure. One of the things I'm glad this is actually brought up is when it comes to like guitar tones, plugins, you see a million every day. Everyone's just saying the same company. Um, my rule of thumb as a guitar player is just also remember there's like 300 amps in the world out there. So neural DSP is not the only kind of thing you can use, and also they are based on real amps. So if you go on YouTube and type in Fender, Champion Reverb Deluxe, and click some dude playing it for like 10 seconds, you can learn more about that guitar amp and then look for a digital. I like mixing what people have already decided for tones because it can be very personal and like subjective. And then if it becomes like an issue in the mix for polish, then we'll go for dry. So for right now,
may I chime in there for real quick
please.
right there? And since I'm not a guitar player, generally when I work with guitar players, I like to include a Google Doc full of like, okay, here's some like reference tracks. Like, you don't have to go exactly like this, but if you can go for this ish tone, if you get what I mean, then I'm like, okay, I trust your judgment. You're going to know how to alter your tone better than I can. So I'd rather just work with what you can provide me. And if I have any issues, I'll let you know and we can work something out.
It's really well put. And like, you're one of the people I think of when I think of like collaboration going well in our scene. And I think that's really, really helpful. My favorite question is probably something like niche. Yeah, so Guitar Rig 5 for a minute. So here's my piece on Neural DSP. They don't endorse me, by the way. They don't currently endorse any of my like super close friends. They're fine. I think they're extremely unversatile right now, and I don't think you should be paying $500 in plugins for an iLok product that only fits in that category. But I actively also use the Archetype Nolly and the Archetype Plini products because I've been writing a lot of music that fits. I don't think like again with DAWs, with cameras, with sports teams, whatever. Everyone's just gonna pick whatever their favorite is, and that's fine. But I can't stress enough to just try different ones and don't feel obligated to buy, the thing that's recommended by everyone. Also, when it's that expensive. That being said, don't go out and feel like you have to buy, a hardware unit unless you're playing live and desperately need. I also do have beef. Neural DSP's $1,600 floor unit is extremely overpriced and has overpromised some stuff that I don't think got delivered for 2 years. So I'm not crazy about the quad cortex existing that way. But again, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you plug in. Yeah, there you go. Again, there's things that are out there for like $300. Go on Reverb, and you can buy that instead of buying like 4 plugins. Again, nothing personal against Neural DSP because I obviously use them. I just feel like if we're bringing up one product constantly and not acknowledging that there's many, many, many different kinds, then everyone's going to be stuck. And also, someone's going to go out and buy Neural DSP, plug it in, and be like, my tone sucks, you all lied to me. We'll be like, well, you're working on like a classic rock track. Maybe you should look into getting like a different kind of simulation. Anyway, that's guitar tones. And like if we just take a quick listen, because that's nice. So it sounds like it's been amped and it has a little bit of reverb at the end, but it's not super messy. It's not washed away. So it sounds like it's going to be pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another track, which will be my folder, bus, depending on what program you use, and I'm going to categorize it there just because I know mentally like we're probably going to be using similar EQ and so on and so forth like that. Search free plugins before buying someone. Yeah, honestly, Free Bedroom Producers blog. You might have seen me post this one, Sean, or even used it yourself, but it's like one of my oldest favorite websites to go to for free compressors, free instruments, odd or less common instruments usually. Like if you don't feel like paying a lot of things, it's really useful. These stems have the effects turned off. So I think correct me if I'm wrong, Sean. These are what we would call like edited but non-effects stems.
Correct. Yeah, they've got the editing is of these. They are the, what do you call it? They've been like timing corrected and everything, and they have Alejandro's amp effects on them, but nothing like reverb, EQ, etc. on them beyond what Alejandro provided me.
So one thing I do want to do here, the piano parts are stereo. We have a left on the top channel and a right on the bottom. The guitars, and especially, the lead guitar is fine if it were stereo, but I believe this is mono. I'm going to right-click the track itself and set it to mono. This is just a mental thing for me, but also
okay.
I want
go for it.
Yeah, I want to be sure I understand exactly where I'm pointing all these tracks. And I feel like if I just have a bunch of stereo tracks, you might have like wider tracks, and you may not know like, oh, this doesn't sound quite like where I want it to be, and so on. So if a track is not actually mono track or whatever, if it's not a stereo track, I'll try to make sure it's in that correct form. In certain DAWs, they get really upset if you don't do it, and you have to make another thing. And I love that Reaper just lets everything work very lightweight and quick. But yeah, just for good measure. And you can kind of tell, like, if it's a stereo track, this is the exact same left and right. So our next track, just moving along, is rhythm guitar pick.
Yeah, they should all be mono, barring the keyboards, I believe.
Okay.
Because I at least when I exported the stems, I rendered them all dead center. So
perfectly. And actually, fun fact that I'll bring up: if you Control Alt R in Reaper, and you're rendering out stems for someone else to mix, which of course is something I always recommend if you can, you can select any number of tracks you'd like, and you can actually check this tracks with only mono media to mono file. So as long as your track is processed with only mono effects and whatever, what you'll spit out is actually a mono file, which is great because, again,
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I learned this maybe from Reaper Tips, and the other plug I can always give, my buddy Alejandro runs reapertips.com. It is chock full of amazing basic effects, simple effects, free ebook guides of how to set up your themes to look like Logic if you want. A lot of like little free extensions, things that can be really crucial for workflow. One right here, for example, there's a bit of noise here. So I have a hotkey to just point anywhere. I'll take off my snap. So I have it set to T for track. I don't really know why I chose T. So I can just point anywhere I want and make a quick cut like that. And I got rid of my other hotkey by accident, long story. But I could delete it in 2 clicks. Guitarists are very often, especially metal guitarists, are often editing our guitars and cutting out a lot of noise so that we can clean up the mix as much as possible. So small stuff like that. It's not a huge deal, but it's just that layer of polish is kind of obvious. Oh yeah, use tokens like track. So if you I usually do this. So $ track or any wildcard that's here, the computer and Reaper will know to use the actual information. It's kind of like a variable. So if I wanted everything to have the name of the song in it, I can also do $title and similar like that. Hey, Betsy, happy Friday. So yeah, moving down the list. So as you said, this is a rhythm guitar with a pick, and then this is a rhythm guitar performance with. So I'm gonna assume these are same person, same kind of instrument, just different kind of processing maybe.
And that's correct. Yeah.
So let's take a listen and actually. Nice. And yeah, it's fingerstyle. It honestly doesn't sound too different to me than the sound, but we can get kind of into the nitty gritty because we have the 2 separate recordings there.
There is the second half, which is the other fingerstyle section. That's a little bit more. I don't know how the word to describe it, but it's it's more clear that it's fingerstyle. But yeah, you can use that information as you will.
Okay. It's got like a mix of picking and also some tapping. And funny enough, yeah, I've been listening to a little bit more math rock. That's kind of nice. Um,
And that was the goal, to have that kind of math rocky
yeah, like
flinger-ish
kind of the
sound.
walking, sort of softer take. I like how intimate it sounds when you have fingerstyle on electric guitar. So again, just like for simplicity's sake, these are all guitars. So we're going to put them under guitar folder, and just for like, I don't normally do this because it's automatic, but we can add a picture. This improves the sound by having an icon. It does not, but I do. In terms of projects, if you're not trying to race this out the door, we really shouldn't, as musicians, try to race music out the door. Um, it just adds a touch. And the other most important thing, of course, I'm going to color these. I'm going to color them with my usual colors. And I know that's going to deeply upset anyone else who picks wrong. Anyway,
I'm weird because I when I color my tracks, all my tracks just need to have a color, and the color cannot be the same or similar to the adjacent color. But I don't.
it's
Really
like those
care.
map puzzles where like you can't have
Yeah.
two. Yeah, that's it's fine. It's definitely a mental like. However,
everybody's got a workflow thing that they have for themselves.
absolutely. So my buddy Christian, he asked me how I colored my tracks like probably 10 years ago, and I was like, well, I make rhythm guitars red because R the and then none of that matches anything else. But mentally, I was like, it's my favorite part, my favorite color. Even though lead guitars are probably what I associate as my favorite. That's green. And I used to record with a green guitar. Back on this channel way too far, you'll find that. So whatever it is, just know that it's just so that you can look at your project and kind of have a quick, very like primal understanding of what you're looking at. The next thing, of course, is bass. Bass should, of course, be mono, and I'm going to make a bass folder, even though we only have one. Get around to why I'm doing that bit. But essentially, we're going to get to play around with some stuff. So from the look of it, it looks kind of like pedal or plugin before it was recorded, which is great. Yeah, it's exactly like school subjects with folders. And I don't know, social studies was yellow, red was English for a while. And then I went to college and none of that applies because like everything, all the rules are gone. If I showed up at class, that's already a win.
Every class I did had math in it, so not very helpful.
Yeah, at engineering, it's just like, well, discrete math could be red. Oh, it's so good thermo. So could and for me it was comp sci, so it was half and half. So one thing again, I can't emphasize this enough because when I've done Twitch feedback streams, you can still catch this in final mixes. Check through your stems and look for noise and spots like that. So things that we don't need, they're not going to contribute to the song, basically. And this is, I think, more obvious in genres that are less dense or don't have all this. So the one benefit I think of having like a 30-track song is perhaps people won't catch you leaving. But
and you can hide more things.
You can hide more things. But then your clarity is lost, but you can hide more things. So little things like that. I know like with acoustic recordings for me, I'm like, everything in this room must shut up. And I can't, I have a squeaky chair I used to have, and that was unacceptable. I stood up to
Has
record.
Garfy ever interrupted you before?
So luckily I don't record a lot of things with my microphones. So he's actually quite patient when I'm playing guitar. He's never bothered me. Usually I'm tracking electric guitar or electric bass. Few times I've had it where I've listened back to recordings and something's in the way. And bottom line again is you just got to redo it and neutralize your sound. I have one recording of a cover I didn't release, which again, there's like 50 of these now. In 2014, one of my best buds, Duncan, he is so like engaged when he plays games or watches TV. And I think he was watching our college game while I was recording acoustic. And at the very end, I played a D chord. It was for Owl's theme from like Ocarina of Time and Zelda. And I'm like, dun, 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 dun. And I just recorded that D chord and held it out. And in the background, you can hear, yeah! And
That's incredible.
my dream is
That's
to
so
re-release,
funny.
like to properly release that and then have it, keep that in there and then just send
That's
it to him and
amazing.
be like, this is what you sound like. Anyway, so yeah, clean up the recording and just based on the volume, you can kind of tell this is a very dynamic performance. We haven't hit it with definitely need compression. Anyway, so that's almost all of the groups. Then I think that's actually about it. I don't think we need the drums. Very optional instrument. So live drums can be really scary because there's so many microphones and so many things that can go wrong. And basically, it's just a bigger endeavor. But the sounds, the in between moments, the noises, it's all going to be worth it. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reorder the instruments in terms of what I think. It it's not that, but this is just also another thing. Think about like the order of operation you like, and the order of your instruments really shouldn't matter. But I just like mentally having drums on top because I do like my drums being.
I also prefer drums and bass at the top. So
What I'm also going to do, I normally have a band mix and like a vocal mix, and we might employ that for like any solo moments, but just so that I have some pre-processing, let's say, things that are going to make the mix balanced out and controlled so that when we send it into the final touches, it already sounds really, really, really even. Mastering is normally the process where your band already loves a song and sends it to a separate house where you've paid someone else money to do that. And in our case, often that is, I sent it to my buddy who's going to load up Oz and Pro L and get it to sound loud. And that's not necessarily going to produce bad music. It's still going to sound really good. But we need to like mentally do our part so that it becomes easier. Every album I've gotten to master for someone else has turned out much better than when I master my own tracks. Easily. I think every amateur, professional, whatever producer will probably feel the same way. But anyway.
And on that
Yes,
note,
please.
whenever I'm working something, I always make it a goal of mine. I don't always have time to do so, but I always make it a goal of mine at least to have at least one other person listen to the draft mix before I make the final touches and send it off to whoever the organizer or whatever is. Because I'm like, just having that a second opinion is so helpful. Just like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? I'm like, I didn't even notice that. Thank you.
That is such a good point. That's like, if there were like mixing tips, the top 3 would probably include make someone else listen to this. And I'm sure you might also think about this. A lot of people in chat might think about this. Who you send it to isn't like that important as much as just getting an impression. And then, yeah, send it to someone who knows how to mix, of course. Get details. Share what you're listening on. The car test people bring up a lot. Where if you can enjoy a mix in your car, it's probably ready. Which I agree with that, but also I disagree. My car speakers sound poop.
I don't have a car right now, so I can't do that.
Do the car test and just like sit in the air like the invisible boatmobile. And just, this is sounding all right. So the way I do that, I have 2 pairs of headphones because privilege. But this is my M50s I've had for 10 years. I've had these Sennheisers for hardly half a year. I got them for Allison, so we like kind of share listening back on mixes. I will lie on the ground and listen through these, and especially when I'm mixing projects of hers too. And then I'll go listen on my phone. On my phone while I take a shower. Listen in the car. I'll send it to someone who has a vastly different space. You know, I have somewhat treated speakers, and I do have SonarWorks Reference, which is the software to kind of automatically balance out your room. But when someone sends me a mix to listen for like feedback or whatever, I have to do at least 2 or 3 of these methods so that we can just be sure what we're listening to truly is what we're listening to. So again, if you have a room and you're like, Well, I've got hardwood floors and nothing on the walls, and everything's echoing. Then mentally, if you have to live in that room, just know, okay, my mixes are going to sound more, echoey, less direct. So I can't be sure my bass levels or mid frequency are quite right. And then check it on your phone. That'll be like a test of what your loudest element is, and maybe if it's like a little too tinny. Um, one program I'd like to share with all y'all. Sure this is so I have what's called Sound ID reference, which is what SonarWorks uses. This is the program that lets you kind of calibrate to. I have it set here as a monitoring effects in which means that I can hear it. You all can hear it in the stream, but when I render it out, these effects will not matter. So I have it set to this model of headphones I'm using, the Sennheiser HD650s. And I also have M50s, of course, which means I can switch back and forth. And this is a great way to kind of listen back. So everyone, if you want to hear like something really screwy, let's listen to like the piano. So now you're listening to what it would be like if it had the compensation. So you can see this green line here is where it's, where it's calibrated for. So if you look at Audio Technicas, there's a curve here, and you can see that like the bass is really high, and then suddenly it dips down a little bit, 100 hertz. All this is saying is that there is like an EQ on your speakers, basically, instead of it being this perfect sort of neutral space. So by compensating that, and by basically turning on this plugin, you're going to hear something that sounds less exciting, but it's more unbiased. So if I listen through with the calibration, I can do that. One of the other fun things, and there's a cheaper program that does this, is it has what's called a translation check. So Sean, you mentioned a car test. If you don't have a car, this has a mode called like translation check for car 1, 2, 3.
That's incredible.
So it simulates what a crappy car might sound like. Harsher than a nicer car where you just bought a new subwoofer and it's kind of dominating the sound. So I employ this a lot, but keep your wits about you. So like if you're listening to this, lower the volume a little bit. So the Japanese TV, for example, is a good one. It sounds kind of like how if I put up YouTube on the TV, you're watching someone's cover and you're like, God, why don't I sound like that? You can get closer. And again, we're just listening back. We haven't mixed anything in 37 minutes, so this is going to sound very different. And also, all of you listening back who don't have this exact same, headphones are getting a really weird sound. But I wanted to share that because I think it's actually an incredibly cool. And you can get the headphone-only version for much less. I have a version that gives me a microphone, and it listens to my room and calibrates it. But I haven't used it yet here because I still have things to put up on the wall, decorations. So I'm like, that's going to change the way sound works. So I have some acoustic panels, Allison's desk behind me, and so on. So we'll get there. But anyway, to get back to our mixing approach. So we've got a bunch of tracks. These are all different microphones that were placed for drums. And yeah, different headphones and earbuds, also very, very helpful. This thing shows some kind of texture your headphone gives to the track. Yes, that's a very good way to put it. It's kind of, Dr. Dre Beats headphones. They're famous for boosting the bass. So if you were to make music using those, you're going to already think your bass instruments and your synthesizers are plenty, in that area. So you may not use EQ and fix them up as much. And then when you go to listen to your music on somewhere else, you're going to be like, oh, there's no bass, but these other headphones, they had tons of it. So you want to find something as neutral as possible when it comes to producing. Now, when it comes to enjoying music, easygoing headphones, Sony, those nice ones, whatever. There's tons of great, enjoyable headphones. And I actually think it's better to listen to music on those kind of fun headphones. Even Audio Technica M50s, they're very popular for people who like listening to music, not just making it, because they do have a little bit of a boost, bass boost. So, they can be quite enjoyable that way. It's kind of like how, videos without contrast, it looks very plain. So boost the contrast. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, we're trying to stay neutral. Anyway, so with the kick drum, you can take a quick listen. I'm just going to increase the volume a little bit. So you can see the spikes, first of all. That's when drummer is actually hitting the kick drum. And then you can see stuff in between. So the word for that is bleed, which is there's just other instruments coming in. But we don't want to process all of them. So we need to find a way to mitigate that. Make it so we're only hearing the kick drum. And by the end of this, when I sample this, you'll see why. So sometimes when I'm sent drums that are live, I just, manually cut any like space in the song where there's noise that we don't, because the kick drum is often like heavily processed. By that, I mean, we're going to use a lot of compression to make sure that it's loud and we get the volume controlled. We're going to use EQ to make sure that we get nice low end, but we can also hear the beat of the song. So what I like to start with is a way to control the bleed. I have this fairly cheap plugin called Bleeder by Wilkinson Audio. This one was like $30, and we can kind of search for where the note is. We can try this one. So as I dial the threshold back, it's letting in more of the cymbals and the snares. And there's not that much of it. But if we crank this, for example, there's no more kick drum. Now, say you don't have this plugin, you hate everything, and you want to just normal way. Also, I'm using a program called Fast Effects Finder in case you see this popping up a lot. It's a Reaper free script to bring up a tool, so when I hit Control Spacebar, I can see a list of effects and just type them in. And the reason why I use this is because I'm an After Effects user, and we have a free, actually I don't think it's, no, yeah, we have a free plugin that does the same thing for refining effects in After Effects, so I wanted that ability faster. I realize if I don't say these things, someone's going to ask it. So we could use a noise gate. Now, we're going to like probably go back and forth on some of these things, but the reason why I like doing this early is because I'm trying to like also get this to sound closer and closer to the final product without doing too much. So one thing I can do, in that once we're done kind of like playing with the drums and getting the noise out of the way, we'll start like throwing in like a little bit of presets and just sort of see what stuff sounds like as is. Anyway, so it's not sounding too bad now, and I'm like debating if I should use paid plugins or not. So I'm going to start with as many freebies as I can until I get mad. So we can just slap a compressor on here. And again, what a compressor will do is exaggerate, it's meant to control the sound. So when we have the kick drum down the, I'm actually going to just go ahead and it's fairly wide. And the reason why I'm going to go wider is just because this is like not a metal track where there's two huge guitars on the hard edges. So the drums have space to live there. But anyway, so this kick drum, if I bring the threshold down, this is kind of like a door slamming on sound, trying to get in. And if I change the ratio, and notice I just used literally a Reaper like stock preset here. But if the ratio is how hard we're pushing down the sound, so if you have something extreme, which I always recommend, do it extreme so you know what's happening. And I'm going to hit auto makeup, so it'll keep the volume the same after it's compressing. The most important thing to look at when compressing is the gain reduction. It's how much of this volume are we affecting? So obviously at a ratio of 76 to 1, it takes 76 decibels to get 1 out. So instead, we'll go back to like 6. And now I can kind of tell that our gate is a Let's just see if we don't need this. We'll just use the deep. So right now we're losing like 10 dB. That's probably too much. And I'm gonna set that to like 3 ms. That to You got back at a bad time. Yeah, because we're working on drums. But yeah, so this is just like what I might have as a starting sound. And now what I want to do is I have a sound in mind, a very modern sort of jazz fusion and rock sound. So I'm going to use an EQ, and I'm using Pro Q just because it's faster, but all EQs sound the same. There's a few features in Pro Q that justify its like price point a little bit, but you can get any EQ that has parametric control. So we're going to make Golden Arch McDonald's sound because there's nothing in the middle here that we need from the kick drum. Kick drum has this nice oomphy low end, you know, the thump thump, the thuds, and then it has a beater sound at the top. Oftentimes I find you can lose that, and a lot of people mixing drums for the first time might have none of that if metal scene, because they're like, oh, I don't want it to be clicky. But as long as we're compressing things, we should have a pretty even sound. So we're actually getting like a lot that we probably don't need. And then this is a low pass. High pass. So our bass guitar is probably going to live below the kick drum because the kick drum is actually not that bassy. For whichever reason. And if I boost any frequencies, you can kind of tell like there's a note behind the kick drum. Like it's tuned to a note. So we can actually find it. So I might like actually leave that as like a boost. And then I'm just gonna But now I'm getting like the cymbals and stuff that we don't. Yes, and here you can kind of hear that knocky. We're getting a lot of the rest of the kit. Probably don't need that. So I'm gonna turn back the gate here. And one thing that I'm always experimenting with is the order. So if we EQ before we compress, we're not going to be compressing all the frequencies that I cut later on, and then those frequencies aren't going to be as loud and as prominent. So I think in this case, EQing first and getting rid of all of the crap that we don't want compressed and brought up and made loud is going to be very useful here. And again, like if I were just like, hey, mix this in a day, I would probably just trigger the kick drum and mix it, which is a technique where basically we would not replace, but we would use the kick drum to trigger MIDI signal, and then we could use pre-recording that's been cleaned up and done in a studio, and that way you get the best of both. But I don't think that would be a very good lesson. And I also think sound-wise, you know, you have a reference in mind that probably wouldn't say that, so we're not going to do that. So for now, let's just call that done. And I'm also going to make 2 folders here just to save on time and organization here. So these are the rack toms. Oh, toms, and this is.
Do you want to pull up the image I sent of my MS Paint drawing of use of strum kit?
Yeah, let me do that. I think that would be integral understanding of this.
Yusuf, don't look.
So Why don't you explain what we're looking at here?
All right, so basically, Yusuf's drum kit has a setup, and I sent this image as a reference, basically. So like that's how it's like in like a live setting. That's what Yusuf's actually playing on.
Mhm.
So generally, I prefer to pan things drummer's perspective. You may choose either one, whatever you think is right. But I like to have like because the high rack tom is on the left. I like to have that slightly left. Right is the lower rack tom. I like to have that on the slightly right. Floor toms on the far right, or not far right, but like center right ish. And that's like generally how I go about things. So if that makes sense, yeah.
That's perfect. So basically, there's a few categories here, and I'm kind of making a lot of assumptions about my audience being, mixed and maybe new to live drums in general, let alone mixing. I know I have a lot of friends, especially who've done amazing things symphonic style and are trying to get into this, especially because JRPGs are like this. They're doing this hybrid thing where they're borrowing like a handful of rock techniques and sounds, symphonic, and now that
I just saw this. I just saw the Sonic Symphony this past Saturday, and case in point.
yeah, no, that's a beautiful example, and it's one of the reasons why I think I made so many friends in VGM is because I could learn from violinists, from drummers, from bass players, from trumpet players, trombone players, like, and now I know how to mix and work all these into like similar projects. But anyway, um, so there's two schools of thought when it comes to how to pan the drum kit, and the only one that seems not universally agreed upon, but it's extremely common in modern rock, modern pop, most applications, and a lot of drummers prefer this too, is what's called drummer perspective. It means that, for a right-handed drummer, your hi-hat will be on the left because that's what you would hear if you were in the zone. So when you listen to that song and you want to air drum to it, you are much more likely able to. That said, I guarantee every single person who has an opinion on perspectives has a favorite album that was panned the other way. So, you could be the other way being like audience perspective. You're watching a drummer and he's, they're playing it in such a way that it's going to sound off. All the classic rock I grew up on, audience perspective. It's just going to depend. But we also don't have to go so wide that it becomes. So what I've done is I put all the toms, which again are the small little drums if you're really unfamiliar, and I pan them kind of to the best of my knowledge on what they should sound like. And those are all mono recordings, as well as the overheads. So I'm right clicking and I'm hitting mono down mix, doing that too fast. And what we can even do, just like for a second, aren't going to sound mixed. And we also need to make sure that the left actually left. Okay, good. So that was just a way for me to be 100% certain. We can also check the timing between these is good. Which they are. I don't remember when, Sean, but like someone sent me drums at some point that were live recordings, the mix, and I wasn't getting, you know what? It was a studio recording and it was recent. I won't say who because it wasn't their mistake anyway, but if you have drums recorded, the sounds can stack up if they're not spaced properly and phase coherent. So I had to do like some delays and inverting phases to make sure.
Oh, that sounds really annoying.
It was a stereo image. It was backing tracks for VGM Con, I'm pretty sure, because that's the last time I touched live drum. So yeah, it's pain in the butt. But we have a left and right, and what I'll actually do is I'll just render out our left and right as one stereo file here. Not having us, and the reason why I did that again is just because of know what the sound's going to look like better when it's out, and it does save on CPU. But yeah, so next is the snare. Snare drum, again, I'm gonna take out any like necessary recording noise. That was really sure the volume. And again, there's a lot of breaks in the song, so yeah, I'm sure you did this too. Just making sure like if there's nothing contributing to the song in that sound, you probably don't need it there. The overheads get the room, they get the drum sound, they get that ambiance or whatever, which is perfectly for getting like vibes. And just like from listening back, this is the first time I think I've played this song on stream where like the stems are starting to sound like kind of close to mixed. They're not, but we're getting there. So there's a lot of really cool tricks I've learned about when it comes to like treating our snare drum. And honestly, like if I were cocky enough, I probably could print our kick drum. I'm not going to do that. But the first trick I want to share cost prohibitive, but it's a trick with FabFilter Saturn, which is an amazing distortion plugin, but you're trying to get rid of cymbal sound. Let's go to so if we take basically this is a way to divide the frequencies in FabFilter Saturn. So if I wanted to, you can, it's like an EQ, you can boost it. I actually do like the sound of that boost, but we can also turn the dynamics knob and get rid of almost all of the cymbal sounds. And that's going to make a huge difference because obviously we don't want to process the snare drum the way we want to process cymbals, or else every time we hear a hit, you're going to get like crash at the same time. So this is going to get that nice, tight, clear sound that's going to just sound that much better. Next, and we'll take a listen. This is a dark recording. I feel like not getting a lot of the brightness of the snare, so I'm gonna see how far I can take it before I trigger this. So usually what I like to do is control that ping. So by hitting this headphone icon here, and you can do this in Reaper EQ and a few, I can hear the ping better. And what you're looking at, so if I hit freeze, what's really cool about the freeze function, of course, talk over it lecture, we can see what our EQ looks like right now. So the snare has like this big bump at 235, which is also where the guitars normally are in a metal mix. But it's quite loud, and usually for snares, I like them to have mostly even character, maybe like a little dip here, and snap, high bright snap would cut through in this. And that's usually what you hear when you reference funk bands and some of these modern jazz groups. Dirty Loops is probably one of my favorite mixes out there, and that's a band with, again, like very few instruments, but it sounds full and very controlled. So I'm just gonna make the snare a little obnoxious. And I do think the recording itself might be distant, and that's what I'm hearing as like dark. And I'm gonna take off the freeze. But we could do like a high shelf maybe. And maybe just like down a little. This is like hardly 2 decibels, so it's not some life-changing difference. But basically with that, the kick and snare are like kind of the heart and soul rhythm here. This is a jammy song you have, so like
I always joke that kick is like the bane of all my mixes because it's the one that I'm just like, I get stuck on it a lot. So
it's funny because it's like we've gotten it clear now, but it's still not like a full sound. one thing I could do, and I did say I didn't want to like use a bunch of paid plugins, is and since Yusuf likes death metal, this is okay. This is a very popular plugin called Slate Trigger, and basically it's listening for the audio, and whenever it hears audio according to my parameters, trigger a recording that was done in a polished studio, pre-processed as a supplement. It doesn't hurt to have it. We can actually blend it in here, and I can also have like a re-trigger time, so it'll only come up every so often. So now, if we take it off, and if we supplement and dial it back in. And honestly, like, I feel like that's still sounding pretty organic, but more importantly, like, it's a good or bad thing. I think for me, if it sounds good and it's still the performance that you're hearing, then I think it's gonna sound good.
I agree with that.
I don't know if I want to do it on the snare, but just for fun, just to like kind of demonstrate what that would be. Real quick, I'm gonna take off the kicks. Now it's gonna death by kicks. Actually, oh, because the mix knob. Okay. So what I can do is slots and then add like and I do find that the triggers are more noticeable because the snare drum is like
It's very explosive.
So yeah, it's easy to get carried away with this stuff, but if you do get carried away, you get to learn exactly what it's doing, and then it's easier to dial it back. The next thing I'll do is overheads. So overheads, again, they're microphones that are literally hung over the head of the drummer, and they capture the cymbals well as some of the rest of the kit. When you listen to the raw recording, I usually just feel like EQ should be enough to control this unless things get really dynamic. And I usually end up with like one big cut up here to get rid of harshness, and then a lower cut. And this one, and see, we get like a little bit of the snare drum here, and that can help make it brighter. I do like a lot. I'm gonna dial back the trigger. I do think it's getting caught, for lack of a better word. I think it's getting triggered by things that snare drums that it's misinterpreting. It's either that or the other way around. Okay, I won't worry about it. Also, I don't think we compressed at all. So I can also explain why it's not sounding as snappy. Add that before. And again, just for the fact that we're streaming this and it's accessible, I'm going to use via comp, which is a and one really cool thing, if you look at the presets for Reaper, maybe this is it says aim for 4 dB gain reduction, aim for 6 dB gain reduction. So they're literally telling you right there, whatever preset you use, you have to tweak it for your specific thing, or it's gonna sound poopy. Also, tracks are getting so. If we aim for this number here, saying 4, like we are now, And I'm actually going to take off the trigger. No, I want it. I was like, maybe we won't need it, but I'll still dial the mix down even more. So we can kind of compare putting it after, but I like this. I'll do like 10 ms, like 100 or something. And making sure we don't, maybe like -3 wet. No, that basically is all the effect that's happening, and we can have like a tiny bit of volume come in dry, which is basically all the uncompressed sound, and that'll give us like a little that raw sustain. These toms -5. One thing that I think is also pretty useful, and I think it can be helpful, is kind of pre-setting your instrument to sound closer and closer to what it's going to sound at the end. So I'm going to put a compressor on the drum bus, and there's like this New York drum bus here that has like a crazy high ratio. If this is set, this is kind of like a limiter. This is probably better for something metal. So have like a ratio 4:1. Actually, let's go to 8:1. Really compress it, and we'll dial that in. And what that's called is parallel compression. We're doing two things at once here. And we'll set it to really fast attack. So, I'm curious, if we listen back to the unmastered, I'm gonna try to play them. Yeah, I actually really like how you got the kick and the snare drums to be brighter and come out better.
Yusuf definitely schooled me a couple times on it. That's for sure.
Interesting. Do you remember if you parallel compressed the drums or anything like that?
Let me take a look. Yeah, I've got my file pulled up. Granted, this was 2 years ago, so I'm not going to remember my exact train of thought.
You don't remember 2 years ago exactly what you did and what you ate?
But yeah, it looks like for my snare, there's way too much crap on the snare drum. I'm not going to lie. That was probably unnecessary, and I appreciate that you're willing to just like cut straight to the point. Like only a couple plugins is all you need sometimes.
My hope is that I'm using only exactly what you need, and also trying to use freebies, because more people can watch and do that. And a lot of the resources on YouTube right now are like, all right, let's load up like freaking Pro Tools, and then I'll just get out my Slate Suite and Fat Filter this.
Everything just comes out, and it's just like, bruh.
We have to be able to get a pretty good sound free, so that you can eventually choose what you want on and get it sound.
But yeah, I did. I want to say I had like the main track, and then I actually sent it to a second track, and that's what I used for parallel processing on the second track. So that has like higher compression rates, a bit of like a transient processor. It's called what's it called? Auburn Sounds Coocher.
Okay, yeah.
So that kind of thing on the parallel track, and the main is less like major compression, but more like overall.
So transient controlling is really cool, because it, in a lot of ways, like forming what compression will can be pretty powerful. So I might play with that in a second too. What I'll do real quick here is also going to have a bus compressor at like 4:1 for the drums. We'll make it like super fast. And we'll only have it affected by snare drums, whereas the other one is kind of like expensive. benefit of doing that, of course, is just that the drum really, really always present character. They won't disappear, and we're getting it turned into not a brick, but it's gonna look a little bit closer to one. So I think that can be really. So now let's check out the toms. I usually try not to do too much with as a lot of work.
There's also just not a whole lot of toms. This was very heavily kick, snare, and cymbals
Yeah.
for that math rocky type of style.
So I can't even tell if the track 1 and 2 were ever played.
There's a handful of times.
Yeah. So what I can do is I can increase the volume and really see what it is. And basically what I'll do, I could use dynamic splitting, which is hit D, and this will automatically kind of cut all the sounds that you need. I don't always trust this more than just taking a few seconds to cut. Difference between, if we didn't do this, to point out, like, you will be doing whatever you're doing to the toms, to all the noise that comes out of these little microphones, and you're gonna have like cymbal splashes coming in and just stuff that you probably do. So
yeah, I've never really used that tool before. Does it have like does like Reaper have just like an internal threshold that, okay, if it's above this,
you set that,
it stays?
So that's a great question, because I recommend this for like voice acting, for just, I have a bunch of recording here and I only need spots. Now, obviously, like the noise floor, while cymbals are going on and stuff, is harder, so you might still want to manually cut it, but you have a minimum slice. Don't cut anything unless it's going to be like pretty significant. A minimum silence length, and then a threshold, just like a noise. So it's gotten most of everything, but I believe this is like, yeah, I can't tell that it's being hit there. And then when it comes to all of these spots, it's a little bit more obvious. Now, basically, there. It looks like it's a bunch of manual work, perhaps, but it's not gonna take me that long. This is what editing stems is like to me. I would do this before mixing, but on streaming. But this is the kind of stuff that also just makes it afterward. And by a drum sampler, this is what they did. They took all those recordings on tons and tons of them playing, so that you drop it into your program, it already sounds pretty good. So, yeah, I'm just getting rid of all of them. I don't think it's like but so now when it comes to like the actual mix, we basically need it to stand out. You're gonna hear it through the overhead cymbal. It kind of already does. So what I would like to do is probably distort the drums a little bit, add like a tape saturation of some sort, and kind of go extreme on it, a high end. I'll split it just that. Overhead. Not satisfied yet. Maybe we can compress. So Windows updated automatically, got rid of it, but it's causing a mouse issue for me, or something on my computer has been screwing up my mouse. So when I click on plugins, it thinks I'm clicking and dragging when I'm not. It's causing a lot of mischief.
Oh, that's really annoying.
It's incredibly annoying, but it's so minute. So what we can do is for a preset again, and there actually isn't one. So start with like a ratio of like 6:1. And we'll have auto makeup. Bring it down until we get. And kind of listen for like the fills. I'm gonna move this even lefter. It may not be like accurate to the kit exactly. It might be like an exaggeration. I feel like this will actually make a more interesting story. And then, yeah, now we can kind of like balance the ball. Okay, and I'm noticing that we're still getting because I'm using all these plugins. So if I take the kick drum, snare drum, like just trying to not use my default and just add like, that's our parallel. Okay, so here what we're gonna do is we're just gonna use the consequence stressors. And what I'm doing here is I'm adding like high passes so we don't bloat the compression that I'm about to enact here. And this is at like, let's go to 21. Bring that output down so it's not clipping. And I'm getting like maybe 4 to 6 decibels in this, but now we can probably get away with like one other even try one of these. I have one. Just, do the smooth. And what this custom opto compressors are meant to be like super. So this is like basically you've mixed all the parts inside, kick drum, snare, overheads. They're all getting EQ'd and compressed. So now we have like a pretty close to final sound, and we just want to even. We don't want to affect the sound of it, smush it. So that's where I think having it very useful. Again, you're just seeing me like fight my to not use paid plugins and stuff, but no, happens. And again, every plugin that you're like seeing here probably has a free now. I also recommend like Plugin Alliance. They have tons of sales and they don't die lock. So if you buy a plugin, you die with that plugin leaping at your funeral. Like you don't have to worry about that stuff. So you can go for plugins that don't restrict you that way. Like I didn't use Smash and Grab or anything. Again, paid plugins and they have iLock and they're not as accessible. I love them. So anyway, that's drums. One thing I'm gonna do real quick is just kind of ballpark where I think this could lie. I feel like the lead guitar, because we have 2 paired guitars, a common thing you'll find in like 1970s and 80s, like Thin Lizzy, Iron Maiden, whatever, is that you won't have like crazy stereoized guitars all the time. So just like so that we can go on about our lives, just kind of like we'll put like the guitars left and right. And I'm gonna put the rhythm guitars both on the same left and right, but only 50%. And this is main stage balancing. Basically, I want the guitars to blend in with the other instruments. So hard to try and fit here. And I'm also going to quickly add light compressor to the heads because I am seeing that they're something. They're a little dynamic here. So I'll do like 3, and I'll bring up the actually turn down the percent. You can actually do this in Reaper by using this knob. There's a plugin that you don't want the effects to be like too. Just dial it back there too. So yeah, we can hear the crash cymbal when we use this delta function. The crash cymbal actually affecting the compressor. You can even do an octo style button. That's a classic. So yeah, we're getting closer to it. Guitars, generally, I don't feel the need to do too much outside of rock and metal, where I feel the need to. So what we'll do is just some fail-safe EQ for now, and basically these are the frequencies that I know I think guitars should. So I'll have like a fairly firm slope, start like at 65. There's no genting going on. There's no top tuning. None of our usual suspects that I find more challenging deal with. So just up to 8,000 hertz is fine. We have a lot of high end here. And one thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna add a bus compressor to and this is a technique that not only Get Good, of course, Periphery and Get Good Fame and all that employs, and this is basically, again, just to make sure that our whole mix is getting glued together and listening to it. This is a preset that I've borrowed. And during like more of the jammy parts, it basically only happens during snare hits and kick. So you can kind of hear that it's just going to affect the mix subtly, but certainly during like more rhythmic engaging parts. And that's going to get us closer again to like what the final should sound like. And yeah, so far that's guitars. Again, we got folks in the chat, so if you have questions, topics, interesting ideas that you'd like to share, please go ahead and throw them in chat. If you've snuck in here and you're like, am I watching? And kind of a walkthrough how we can approach mixing a track that hopefully is relatable enough, especially for the VGM scene, but just in general. And kind of think out loud about different ideas on how to approach. Our next move is going to be for the bass. So, bass is kind of tricky because this one, it looks like it's close to pre-processed, but we only have some stuff to it.
It is worth mentioning that this is fingerstyle bass and not picked bass. So if that influences what you're doing,
it should. So with finger bass, I find the dynamics are more controlled in your hand, but they can be more unpredictable. Pick guitar, bass guitar can be more consistent, and it certainly has like more flighty transient formation. You get the same kind of attack that might match up. then you also have a lot of like sudden spikes and things to look for. And then slap bass is, it's all about like pops and slaps that are going to be like bursting into your recording. So I personally haven't found a method that is like foolproof when it comes to tracking slap. I think I want to hear someone record slap bass through the pedal, just so that there's some compression going in or something.
Nico, I have an assignment for you if you're still here.
Yeah, if you have like a dark glass pedal or like a preamp of something, I would love to that. So what? Sorry, my mouse. So what I urged, like what I feel like doing first, is definitely some sort of like compression going in. And this sounds a little bit like there is something processed on it. So what I'll do is just through the folder, these are all emulated compressors, and we'll just go for like one. You can use like a Ria comp. I just like the warmth. What we'll do as like a thought experiment, what we'll do like to kind of see what this looks like is we'll just like compare the wavelengths here for a second. So the bottom one is the recording that we got, and the top one is the recording after the somewhat significant amount of compression. And now that it's more square, you're not going to have the bass jump up and down in your mix, and it's going to sound a little bit hopefully polished. So that's like a committing move that I just started trying out at first here. There's a lot of different options I think you can do when it comes to mixing bass, especially for bandy music. I have this Plugin Alliance amp peg that I got in a bundle that's been kind of fun to use. So I'm gonna like kind of be experimenting.
That's the one I use as well, actually, for my primary bass amp sim.
Oh, I put it on the king. So, what's cool about having an amp sim, I guess, versus IDI is just like there's a bit of rounded out frequencies. So yeah, when it comes to bass Q, I don't think I do it. But we do have like a bottom point. We know what frequency lowest because we have that you can pro Q, but also we also know that the kick drum wasn't that bassy, so we're probably going to let the bass guitar go lower. Like 40 to start. Kind of like have a natural. It's already kind of like lower. Just kind of exaggerating that. Kind of hear like the high end of the. Oh, I might like bring that up a little. So what kind of like a good indication to me that my bass has like achieved some consistency is that it's not jumping around that much. So I actually don't anticipate needing to do much compression. You go to like find them like for what you call it, fab filter. But what I'll do is I'll make like a new, just kind of cut spikes. Yeah, we're only getting like 1 dB, but that's because we compressed the signal early on, so you don't need to like stack as many compressors, I think. So yeah, that's kind of good enough for bass integration.
Can I say something?
Please.
One tip that I learned from someone on Discord, they actually told me one thing they like to do with bass is you create a second track and you send the bass file into that second track and you high pass it to like 500 something, so you only get to like the mids and high ends of the bass, and then you apply a lot of saturation on it and then volume balance accordingly, just to get a little bit of that. This technique,
I don't know if it originated in rock and metal, but it's extremely common, and I would do it every time in rock and metal because I know that we're gonna want some of that warmth. So the only reason why I didn't do it first is because I was like, I don't know if we need it, and I definitely don't want it to sound too distorted. But
for sure,
this is a good chance to plug. My friend Joe Calderon of Orcheco made a bass plugin.
I love the group.
It's a phenomenal.
Yusuf told me about that, man. I'm like, this group is insane.
They're also one of the best mixed bands, I think, in like the rock, jazz, fusion inspired prog sphere. So their bassist, of course, Wizard, as a player, also developed. I don't want to call it a parallax competitor, but it's essentially like an all-in-one bass compression, general EQ, and then distortion quad bass. And it's actually
cool.
Yeah, it's not too expensive. It is cheaper. A lot of similar plugins, but what's cool about it again is like you can slap it on. You have like a lot of saturation coming in. And like Sean pointed out, we can focus on just like not the low end. You get like a very fuzzy sound. It may not sound even good to your ears right now, but with this as a layer, we can kind of blend it in, fill out some harmonic stuff in the bottom. So as a full listen now, it's not sounding bad at all. I recommend any bass producer or just like producer who needs a good distortion compression situation, check it out.
Can you type that in the chat, like the name of the?
Yeah, absolutely. Not like literally, it's just one person, of course. But yeah, Joe's done fantastic work. And it's a plugin made by a fantastic player, so a lot of the demos coming from him are going to sound really good. He's a big like Foo Fighters and Rush fan, so like there's a lot of range of it. I found that it's kind of replaced my bass go-to, unless I'm doing like a periphery sound alike, and then even then, I have plugins that sound identical or presets in my quad bass that are like. So, yeah, really great, very affordable, no iLock. So, yeah, and there's good demos from Adam Bentley, who produces and plays in Orcheco. I do recommend checking it out. One thing I'm going to do real quick. So lead guitar, I usually, for like applications that aren't, again, super dense, I don't like to mess with the frequencies too bad, but I do think there's some low end that we don't necessarily need. applied like any crazy effects or anything. If I really to I'm this stylistically, I wouldn't mind having like call it slap delay, which is just light enough where maybe not necessarily. But right now, just live drums, piano, like it's so few instruments that I almost want it to feel like a live band's repertoire. Some of the this was if you were listening back to like a Magfest or VGMCon show and the quality was this, I could believe that was a performance. Kind of the fun of having it this and again just cause we've only so the next element I think definitely worth looking at here, pianos. So when it comes to mixing pianos for rock, it's a wide instrument. It's like guitars, more so. So I think that's the first step, is just kind of like acknowledging this is going to kind of sit in a lot of places. So it's going to be fighting the guitars a lot, and it's going to have its own lead in different spots. Kind of see.
And I want to mention that pretty much, at least as a piano player, pretty much all the piano VSTs I use are stereo in nature, because like there's something that just feels wrong about playing a mono piano. It just doesn't sound right or feel right to me.
I imagine like even if it was like an effect, you would want to record a stereoized piano.
Oh, absolutely. I was actually giving mixed feedback on someone's for a previous album track a while back, and the first thing I pointed out was the piano is mono. Fix that.
Yeah. It's like if you're not if it's like if it's not an effect, there's maybe not a benefit to having a mono piano. If you're stuck with one, or if you're like doing a Beatles thing or whatever, then yeah, like there's probably going to be some balancing out to make it work. But people are
for anything in 2024.
Yeah, people aren't going to be expecting that. So that's going to sound odd for that reason too. So, one question I've got to ask, I think, approach this better. Is this like high piano and low piano? Like, is there a logical delineation here?
So there are two separate piano parts. Piano 1 is definitely plays more of a lead role, and piano 2 is more the chords comping and like the arpeggio stuff.
Okay.
So I'd say like what I did for this arrangement is I had the rhythm guitar panned on the right side, piano 2 panned on the left side, and then piano 1 center right and lead guitar center left. So there's a little bit of like that crisscross effect, if you get what I mean.
I think that's actually what I'm, I guess, by accident doing.
Subconsciously doing it, yeah.
Oops, yeah. So, oh, that's why. So yeah, what I've done here is kind of like you described. I'm going to go 50-50 just because we kind of have that space freed out. And then the first thing I want to do is fix my mouse clicking issue, but I can't. So the next thing we'll do is probably compress, and then we'll dial back the mix. Press piano cancel off. So it's got that like shakiness. The reason why I want to do this is so by compressing the piano during all these parts where it's going to be really dense, it's much easier to hear the signal because we've compressed it a little bit. So there's always going to be something loud enough in that signal. But it's a piano and it's dynamic and pretty. You don't necessarily want to use that all the time. So if you get really nitpicky about it, you could even automate how much something. What's kind of beautiful is you could do it like print out, like render a piano that's super compressed and back and forth. For my sake, if you don't have to do that, we won't do that. So I have a virtual mix rack again. Just use whatever compressor you like. Then I'm going to use an EQ. It's kind of at least to where I can mix it. Something around 7K maybe. And again, it depends on the part of the song. I feel like I'm not. Because if I'm not affecting any frequencies at all, like because the piano's not playing it, then I'm really not going to notice it. And then we can cut a little bit out of the middle. You don't necessarily do that. And we can also put tape saturation on this. Maybe just brighten top half. So yeah, we're already getting like pretty organized here, and what's happened now is like our mix is filling out all the spots that we need. I'm gonna add a bit of brightening EQ. I have one preset that magically do. Just get it to like commercial brightness. And then from here, I'm gonna dive back into the drums and see if I can get a reverb quick.
I do have to say, I really like that term commercial brightness.
Yeah, it's what you're used to anyway, so let's just never stop making music sound this bright. But if you're not sold on like, my song doesn't sound like my favorite song yet, another tool I use in the monitoring effects is, it came with, Sean, do you remember that day that iZotope accidentally charged $182,000 products?
I may have seen that. I know I got their Black Friday bundle for like $50, and I use iZotope Trash 2 saturation on pretty much everything I do, but
so
yeah.
It's a similar kind of thing. I think it might have been Black Friday or close, but they sold every product that iZotope has made for the most part that was $2,000 value by accident for like,
oops.
yeah, and then I mean they removed it and everyone who got it got it. Anyway, so I got this program called Tonal Balance Control. While you shouldn't like try to mix eyeballs as a primary thing, this is a great way to check like if things are in line or not objectively, because the computer knows your balance. Now I can turn on SonarWorks, I can use all these different programs to try and balance my listening, but this gives me a bunch of general guidelines as far as like different genres balance out. So like you can upload a song. I have a few interval songs, mixes I like, peripheral spirit box for when I mix metal, but you know, like you also get more general ones. I like the modern, and you can kind of just watch how you're sitting in each band, your low end bass frequencies, your mids, where like and if you have something that's like super off, this is a great way to check it. So we can definitely see like we're kind of off when it comes to like some of this 1,000 error. That could be because I typed it out. So we can start looking. Oh, I know what it is. Like the bass. Maybe we could bring it back.
Because yeah, there's notably 2 sections where the bass does take the melody lead.
Right.
So.
And that does throw a wrench in like using programs like this, because yeah, it's not expecting you to have your unique configuration, but you can still kind of get some stuff out of it. I'm gonna quickly make a reverb track here. I did is your new paper, clicked the route button, clicked and dragged it, and then I dropped it on another track. And if you do it this way, it sends that track. Audio from the snare drum is now going to instance of Valhalla Room, which is a reverb plugin that I like now and then. Think snares. We can like my room. I think for something like this, it does make a nice little difference. So, just another little way to spruce up drums. We can, and I don't normally do this, we can add like a band EQ, and I've seen this done a few times just to have like a little bit more of that lively sound. One thing that I think is crucial for this is want to add an EQ every reverb you have to control overwhelming sounds coming in. So one thing I can do here is I can send drums, and then I'll do a pre-effect. Not getting the hyper compressed sound. I'll send the guitars to the reverb. I'll send the bass. So all of this space is going to be cutting down. You can kind of tuck it way down. Making sure the compressor is on, doing its job. Sometimes if your volumes change, your compression. So yeah. That's now condensed our entire project into 2 tracks to worry about. And mix, and we have. So assuming that you're happy with how this sounds so far, also a little hot tip, there's a track manager in Reaper. You can hide stuff. So we don't need to look at the reverb track. We don't even need to mix there, but I'll leave that. We don't need the reverb in our track. So this is just a cool way to kind of like better. I'm not sure about it. Now we can focus on the whole song. So another round of compression can be helpful. You can use something like the glue is a pretty cool one, or any sort of free compression. Reaper has a bunch of them. Often they just have like JavaScript plugins like this. Toucan bus compressors, everyone.
I didn't realize that JS stood for JavaScript.
I believe it does. That's why there's so many of them, because they can just code it. So this is just like a free stereo or mid-side. We could do like mid-side compression. So now the mids are compressed a lot more, for example, the side gives you kind of a nice sound. Again, and it's just trimming off the transient quite a little bit. And there's a lot of like different tools that I'm personally not comfortable advising or using for sure, because I'm like, this is such a simple mix. Like, we shouldn't be multi-band compression. There's not that much to even control. One trick that I found using like mid-side EQ, Alex, and also borrowed this one, I think, from Misha Mansour. Basically, when it comes to mid-side EQ and compression, if you're not familiar, this is like a to control center where your vocalist kicks, snares, beats, and your sides where guitars and pianos are differently. So we don't need bass to be like way out here. So this is a low cut or a high pass to get rid of like mud that might exist there. And then little boosts in different ways kind of change the stereo. So if we listen to the delta, focus on and so it's just a cool way to kind of like control the guitars a little bit and to have less mud.
That is really cool. I'm gonna note that for myself.
Yeah, it's a really cool trick. And just in general, mid-side EQ can be really useful. Synthesizers, I'll often cut out a lot of channel stuff, so nothing gets in the way of my vocals, nothing gets in the way of my like. But yeah, it's just really useful, a trick that way. And then on top of everything, once we have like a really, 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 really solid like foundation, adding something like is going to go much easier. You can add a preset, and if all the presets aren't already sounding like somewhat acceptable, you can really catch it quick. If I just use one of these. Probably don't need like the purpose again is like you now have a song that's like so tight edited, there's no noise, there's a little bit more balance in between, and honestly like the unmastered mix sounds really good. So comparison, actually this is unmastered, so I feel like it's a very, very subtle comparison. The difference in probably and like stereo image is the only major difference, and a little bit of brightness right now. But both of them are also going into this like random plugin. My mouse is dead. But they're both going into this Ozone, like, pretty much ready to be affected. I think right now the mix we've made on stream is a little bit more pressed, be a little bit more receptive changes. So yeah, I wanted to pull up a preset just because, again, I think it's really helpful to do your due diligence and see how good presets actually are before. Also, I'm just gonna rename these. I don't know why. It's all official and labeled. So this is where I would probably start to use. Yeah, we're listening through. This whole time, it's been calibrated for just me. So you can kind of see if stuff's getting too bright. We can even go to tonal balance real quick and see if there's any, like, again, deficient spots. And, like, the reality is there's just not that many instruments going on anyway. So with Ozone, I think like broad moves are the only sound acceptable without really screwing. We just start like carving things out. It can get very messy very quickly. What's nice is we can also hear the bass solo that is still coming in clearly. I'm gonna employ one plugin real quick. So one thing I think reveals itself in final stages is how the drums are. So there's a plugin called Soothe, and it's, if I understand it, basically a million little compressors that go in and kind of massage, soothe out harsh frequencies or troubling small frequencies. You have like a flute part, and there's like, this is the plugin I would go to first.
Sounds like there's a lot of math involved. Holy crap!
There very well must be, because like
that's a lot.
It's meant to be as transparent as it. So if we listen, like, and what it's literally affecting, it's all that like digital.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've never heard of that one.
Soothe, yeah, it's really useful. It's super powerful too. So like if you turn it up too high, you lose all the sheen. But as you see, like when it's moving, it's working. So I was recommended this plugin basically because of cymbals, but I have put it on trombones. I put it on synthesizers, acoustic guitars, regular guitar. I've tried not to overdo it, but basically, like, it's your chance to kind of redeem.
It just makes everything nice.
It makes everything a little bit smoother, yeah. But that can be a problem because sometimes that means, okay, there's like no attack anymore. Cymbals sound. But yeah, it is a little expensive, so that's like the one I really shouldn't have to reach out to. But another use case for it that has stay, I will use it on mastering especially, and like cleaning up projects where I'm like, all right, there's something about this that could be a little bit firmer. Right now, I think this mix needs to get a little bit smoother. So they have a million different presets by a bunch of different producers. I like the ones to like de-essing the master usually. Another cool trick, say you're working on a vocal song, you're like, ugh, everything just sounds like clutter. How do I get it to sound like that commercial sound? You can put a soothe on your instrumental and side chain the vocals, and then only the frequencies that the vocals occupy will get turned down in the. So it's kind of like cookie cuttering out the band to perfectly fit the, and only that. So you won't get rid of all the good stuff, all the guitars and piano parts and stuff that wiped out ordinarily.
I will keep that in mind, considering the next Game Group track I will be doing will have vocals on it. So
Yeah. And again,
yeah,
same due diligence, pre-compressed vocals, do all that stuff. But this is a really cool trick. And you can do that same kind of trick with a compressor or whatever. You can do it with dynamic EQ. But I love it soothed lately. So what we can do is listen in. And we're only gonna hear like really simple frequencies. Which is kind of the point. I have a suspicion of what's, affecting this sitting around. And it has a soft and a hard mode. And soft mode is less obtrusive when it comes to like mixed balance, I think. So like, it's not going to be as abrasive. So now when we listen back to the mix, if we take off all mastered, it's subtle, but because we can actually use the delta function, you know exactly what is actually being softened down. And again, I'm gonna listen to this later and be like, the whole point is that like we're getting closer and closer to this final picture.
Oh, and we should mention on that point, when mixing, just a break, extremely helpful.
Yeah.
Just to give your ears a rest.
Like, after, I believe, 15 minutes, the ears are accustomed. Your volume perception will be hindered quite a lot. So, like, when you listen to music in a car and your subwoofer's really boomy and stuff, after a little while, within reason, it's not going to actually sound like that much heavy. And that means you've
until you turn it off.
Yeah, until you turn it off. So when you're acclimating to the stuff, your mixing is also bad. So even though mixing should be a fairly like straightforward kind of process, and you're like working towards an image that, I think breaks are another one of those like top tips everyone benefits from. And yeah, to that point again, like there's not that much else you have to throw on master. Literally right now we just have soothe and EQ. Now you can add all sorts of different effects, so we can like play around with things like an imager, which just adjusts your panning that you've already spent time on. Just like recliners, pulling low end center. I don't mind this stuff. I don't feel like the biggest difference is until I've rendered it out. But usually this is the stage where your mix is already so superb that like your changes really shouldn't be the reason it sounds good. Otherwise, there may be something else. The last thing I'll do, and this is going to be CPU intensive, so I'm going to have to send Sean a mix anyway, but basically we have a limiter. If you're not familiar, a limiter, they come in all sorts of different plugins, is to it's a very strong compressor to control your overall volume as transparently as possible. Get it close to what you. We have this loudness unit, logarithmic. You know what? You know this stuff better than I do. It's like your job, right?
Some stuff I do, like some kind of like sound modeling with in like spaces I needed, but
fair enough. Volume in general is just like, it's not as simple as like, is it 10, is it 1, and each step along the way gets a equal unit, or there's not like, make your song this loud and it'll be as loud as but that is kind of how we talk about it. So for one thing, FabFilter Pro L has these loudness unit called ballparks. And this is a point on average, because these are all sound waves, so we call our averages root mean squares, or RMS. The one thing I remember from AP Physics. But when you're finishing,
it's the only thing worth knowing anyway from AP Physics.
It's so true. Hey, no, kinematics is funny because we would draw diagrams of people playing and jumping around and stuff. Anyway, so yeah, when you're asking God, why is my song not as loud as blank's song? These are like the tools I think that can help answer your own perception of what's loud. And before even getting even further, your bass levels and your brightness of your song, those are going to affect what you perceive as loud. Because you could have booming, loud, super bass, and then your song may be like technically louder, but on your phone it may not seem the same way. There's things like Spotify is normalizing music, Apple Music is normalizing, shrinking it down, and sometimes even harming the quality. YouTube apparently. So all of that is to say, I try to get most like people who send me mixes, I try to get it around -14, but I also want the quality of the sound to be so good. So there's this 1-to-1 button in FabFilter. As we listen back to the mix, especially during the loudest spots, the volume of this isn't going to get louder, but you're going to hear the quality of the song change. I just found out about this button too. So when you look at like professional mixes that you've downloaded off the internet or whatever, you drop it into Reaper, you'll notice that they have this quality where they're hitting the ceiling during like snare hits usually or something. So we're hitting -9, which, I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to go to like Spotify jail. It just means that, you know, your volume is a little bit louder. A lot of my friends mix quite loud. What's great about non-metal music is that even if you're this loud, it shouldn't be too, because we've done soothe, we've done ozone, we've done EQ, we've done pre-compression. So we're getting this thing like packed, and in my mind, it's like, you know, you've controlled a lot of the spiky, annoying, harsh sounds up to this point. So when we listen to this mix, I was using the 1-to-1 knob to listen in for artifacts, clipping, things that are like going to start smushing that mix, and it won't sound as good. There's also a lot of different styles of compression. Since this is kind of like a rock song, I think the modern is fine. I cannot hear it. So I just know like the pace of the song affect whether or not we need to back and release faster. I use the delta controls too much, I'm gonna start losing. So honestly, like, I'm not hearing anything too bad, and I'm streaming this at the same time, so I really should be hearing more terrifying artifacts than I am. So from here, what I can do is I'm gonna probably script the stream for 5 seconds and render out an MP, and I'm gonna turn on the oversampling. This just basically does the job a few times and compares the two so that it has a more rounded out and thus hopefully a cleaner sound for us. I'll also throw FabFilter just so that it's doing like a little bit of rounding out. And then dither is more important if you're making CDs. I forget why, but I believe it's because of it's. But what I'll do is basically render this out, and then I can have Sean take a listen to it, and we'll listen to it all stream. And then the most other important thing, I guess, sure you know this, is the cycle. Listen back. What went wrong? Oh my god, this sounds terrible. And kind of like, you know, retrospectively, what. So I'm gonna render this. Ego dark, since I'm on a Discord call, technically that should stay alive. So I'm gonna call this RB Mix V1, make it an MP convenience. I'm using bitrate 320 kilobits, constant things there. I haven't found the resample mode to affect the quality of the listen back too bad. Sample rate, I'm gonna set it down to 44 in Sean, are you listening at 4?
I typically do 48 for everything, so.
Then we'll keep it at 48 kilohertz. This is automatically converted by X, and people listening back, this shouldn't matter on paper, but it does affect the sound of. And this is my chance also. I guess I'm still streaming. Yeah, we're still. So
congrats on living.
I honestly expected it to like die on me. I'm also gonna turn on the light here. I think I can go to dinner earlier. So in the render, when you look at, again, this is the stupidest thing. When you look at the WAV file and the format itself, you can tell if something has been properly limited and compressed or not, depending on the genre and a million other factors. But you can also use these different measurements that are being spat out right now. Some of the ones of note are the loudness, LUFS units, and then median recording. There's like a integrated. So this is just at the moment of the song, you know, like that. So the peaks, by like the max might have been, and that could be way too loud. FabFilter has this, out control knob, so you can bring that down. So we've limited, meaning like we've hit the limiter and compressed to a style that we like. But then you can listen back at any volume. You know, if you crush a song and make it horrible and super loud and then listen back really quietly, it's still quiet. So that's all the logic is there. If you want to get extra, and I do this when I master group albums, you can literally open a stat chart of your mixes and kind of get a sense of how loud your songs are. If there's any significant clipping, you can see it in here. You could even do it per song, so you could do like markers or regions, and then your loudness range, which can also tell you how dynamic the song is going to be. Again, this is a jazz song, fewer instruments, so it's not always going to be super saturated. So I'm personally like kind of happy that this looks the way it does. I wasn't trying to brick it, but now this is a fun part. Sean has essentially not.
I've like slowly like turned on like the stream audio.
Yeah.
But obviously there's the delay with that, and I basically have to like shut it back off the moment you start talking again.
Yeah, I figure it's just not like the ideal.
It's what it is. Oh, okay. Moment of truth. I'm clicking play button, and I'm. Do you want to hear my like live reaction in the moment, or should I mute my mic?
I would
and
love your live reaction. And again,
okay,
your mix is good. I don't think
for sure
there's going to be like a jaw-dropping difference, but
yeah, I am excited to see just like the different variations you applied to it.
Yeah,
like,
it's a different interpretation.
And it seems like
too, stylistically.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially since like you come from like that metal and prog background, while I more come from like that jazz background. So
yeah, there should be
different
like
perspectives and all that.
Yeah, there should be a different like target point, I think.
All right, commencing play. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, I should.
These cymbals sound really well done.
Glad.
What you did with like the suit of the cymbals.
I think the suit shows up in the
sound
render.
Nice and crisp.
They show up in the render a lot better too.
Yeah, I really like, just the cymbals, just like they sound like you can hear the transits here when they stop and it's not muddy. That's like best case scenario.
I think, so like, this doesn't happen in a lot of metal mixes, but they're just tucked down enough to where they're not like brittle. And then this big, like 5 dB cut, which isn't even that big, was plenty. I still think subjectively, I do like your kick sound better. I think you managed to spend more time on the kick.
Yeah, I mean, for doing this in just over 2 hours, this is really well done. So
I'm glad.
Like, I want to say, I mean, I did this project over the course of a month. So
yeah, and it shows in terms of like how much time you spend with the part. Because yeah, like the kick drum, I was just like, I'm gonna trigger this, and I could have used Superior Drummer and gotten like a really jazz-friendly kick. I just didn't think of it. Probably bring down the singles.
I will say, I do think like this because I didn't see you use like any automation. I do think during like the bass lead section, I feel like the bass volume can come up at those segments.
One trick I would even do there, instead of bringing up the volume of the whole thing, like the distortion trick, I would cut the solo, EQ just the high end, and then layer, just so that you're not bringing up all the sub content or like maybe. But both methods will still sound pretty good.
Yeah, overall, very well done. I just think the
I'm glad.
Like, I think my only major thing is like, I would like more bass lead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like mixing a bass solo is not easy to do, especially like it's supposed to be the foundation of everything else, and then the very times it does get a chance to shine, it's like, oh, I gotta completely change my mindset with this.
Right. Often with my bass solos, I have to write around that section so that like, you know, no guitars, like just no guitars, because otherwise people won't hear it or they won't pay attention. So it's really cool working, I think, in the jazz space and mixing these kind of projects, or even any of Ali's where things are exposed more. So you know, this having less elements is scary in a lot of ways.
I feel that. I definitely relate to like, I joke that the genre that I struggle the most with is actually solo piano because I can't hide.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, yeah, like piano performance is always really interesting. I think David Russell and I spoke about. I think I've mastered a piano collections he did for Lindsey Sterling, where again it's like I'm doing so little and such.
It's intimidating, honestly. Like the fact that like anything you do can like have a major impact,
right?
Because it's so exposed.
It's where again stuff like Soothe, stuff that's so subtle and light touch, move it closer.
Just like that tiniest pinch of salt right there can really make a difference.
With the overheads, especially, it's so bombastic that if I had done something as simple as I'll just put a compressor overhead preset. Boom, like all of a sudden it's like it could just block the entire listening experience.
Yep.
And even then, like I'm listening back just on one pair of headphones and I'm like, they're too loud. Like that actually
overall, I'd say you get my approval for
I'm glad.
For like 2.5 hours. That was really good.
And
I also do want to shout the 3 amazing performers on this.
Yes, please.
Yusuf, Nico, and Alejandro. Like
killer players.
Like a good song starts with a great musician.
It shows tightness of purpose. There wasn't a second I was like move something, retime it, retune, and in a lot of my own projects that comes up first. Like, didn't play.
Yeah, I did all the like the micro editing. I did all that, so you wouldn't have to because that's
good. That's good.
I like mixing. I do not like editing. It's just like, and then you spend like 5 minutes. Like, it's like plus or minus like 0.002 or whatever. It's just like nope.
Yeah, it's going to be the thing that throws you off, and by the end of the day, you're just like, man, maybe this would have been the thing to fix all of my problems. Hey, Crescendo. So yeah, like I think performance is really important. Recording tone is important. This is some of the best recordings I've heard from Yusuf in terms of like bleed reduction and things. And yeah, like they were still hard to work with because of XYZ. I know this is an older recording too, so I think I've heard some even like tighter stuff from the Winnie the Pooh song that used to be played on that I Allison's album.
For Allison's, like was that part of
the big band album,
Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah. So yeah, having like a little more beater sound brought out by sampling. You know, the snare, getting rid of all the cymbals by using this one trick that doctors hate with Saturn. Like all these little moves to where your recordings are prepped. And one trick I did for what was the last album I did? Game Raga, I think. No, technically it's anyway.
Was it SitarCraft?
I think SitarCraft is chronologically one of the last, but Dark Hunter Rises, which again a redo, but I re-recorded a lot of this stuff, and I would print all of my stems out as much as I could, and I would try to mix them in a new project just for mixing.
Ooh, that's just so like you have a different mentality approaching it, I imagine.
It's also like the thing we're supposed to do. Like that's how you would go to a studio and you'd be like, here's my pre-production. But yes, different mentality. I'm fresh. I'm not reaching for plugins. I'm not reaching for like default, and everything should be easier to mix, especially when it comes to stuff that you...
Yeah, for massive stuff Beyond the Sky, I honestly I had 3 different Reaper files for that. I did the first one entirely, all the instrumentals, all the editing, pitch correction. I never want to look at Melodyne again after that project. Good lord. Then I had a second project for all the choir stuff, and then the third project was where I actually did all like the plugins and effects and stuff.
Yeah, and it shows again because like again it comes up a lot, especially like in discourse of like video editing or giant audio editing projects. Yeah, you have to like kind of get used to committing, and you have the backups worst case, but as long as you're making moves towards a sound that you want. Again, if someone sent me 8 violin parts and cello parts, eventually I just need a bus like of that, you know, pre-panned, we're good to go, or you know, light compression, EQ, and we're good to go. Because otherwise, you're just not going to be able to wrap your head around so much. And like I remember, Husky by the Geek just released an incredible Final Fantasy 14 tribute.
I still have to listen to that.
And again, it's great. All of them are always great. He had like Sony Vegas crash like 16 times on him or something like crazy.
Oh no,
and it's like,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, there is a point at which you can't make things in a standard program without some compromises. But if we like, you know, that's why you build each scene one time. Maybe you pre-render 20 seconds. And when it comes to the Paper Mario Origami King video,
yeah, that's still my favorite work in the VGM scene to date. That was an incredible experience to watch.
It was
for the first
similar
time.
and
being in the chat for that too.
Yeah, I actually really wish I could rewatch the Twitch stream, if someone has it, just to like see the reactions.
Would Doug have it? What do you know?
I wouldn't be shocked if Doug and had it, but we were all watching in a Discord, the Arrangers, and yeah, because I think we did like a post-show interview or something. I'll have to dig all this up. But that humongous video...
That was 3 years ago, good lord.
Yeah, it was 2020.
That's insane.
2021 February, I believe it debuted.
I think it was March.
I was on call the final week of it.
I was still in college at the time, so...
And of course, everyone was at home. But a project that big, like... so there's... Gosh, I'm going to forget the number, but there was like 16 or 17 what we called sections. Every single video was assigned to someone else and pre-rendered in a ProRes huge file, 20 to 30 gigs each. Because no computer can just print that final thing out.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, like we would break it down, and then credits were like the last thing. Like they were done the morning of kind of thing. No. It was the night before, and then we did all the videos and stuff. And then my computer was deemed the one to get all of the last files in, because I had some of the most sections to cut up myself, and then I took a bunch from Robbie Duguay and Thomas Kresge, and then Pete Gillette had handed me one of his sections. So like basically we were just like compiling parts and breaking it down so that mentally we could even tackle it. Logically, we could put it into one final Premiere file, which also had to be exported as a ProRes because it was just too much it's too complex for H.264, I think. And then we took that and converted it into an MP4. I gave it to Doug at like 10 a.m. or something.
Holy.
Or like just after checking it again, standing up, watching through that video again and again, just like nothing. No mistakes, no misspellings.
It did pay off.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service there, because you and the team, it was incredible experience.
And again, like it just works together when people aggressively push themselves and team up as much as possible and don't accept anything but the absolute best, most creative idea. I don't know when we'll do something like that again, but there was talk of Game Grooves being inspired by that.
Oh wow, that's really cool. I'm being
probably something
told
smaller.
the secret.
I don't even think it's a secret
sure.
so much as it's an idea that feels inevitable that I would love to do over a long period of time.
This is an Alan appreciation space.
It kind of is. I'm sure if Alan wanted something like that, my only stipulation would be like, it can't be a game that's like, the game has to be so open for arranging that's comfortable for everyone. Like, I wouldn't pick a JRPG probably, or another one of those. I wouldn't pick something like so stylistically set. Like, we couldn't do it for Elden.
I could see something like Super Mario Galaxy being a great catch-all.
I could see a Mario Galaxy would be a really nice one. I think a Pokemon video could be doable. I think older games are a little more malleable, but also I think there would be a little
bit easier breakdown.
Yeah, there might be more magic if it's not. Like Origami King, great game. I'll say something that'll get me canceled. I think I played through Thousand Year Door for the first time. I got the same out of it that I got out of Origami. I don't think
I haven't played any of the Paper Marios yet, so I'm not allowed to judge.
I'd say if you wanted to, Thousand Year Door, since it's on Switch.
I do plan on playing the remake. I just haven't.
I would say 64 is also perfectly fine.
I've been told play original, play Thousand Year Door, play Super, and then you play Origami King. I've been told to skip paper
Color Splash, Sticker Star, all that.
Yeah, those ones.
Again, like I'm not an RPG fan. There's a lot of RPG games that I happen to like, but yeah, Origami King was really pretty and the soundtrack was really, which again, I think that's why it was such a good time to try it. That game had that diversity, to where you could pull in someone from jazz fusion.
Yeah, I loved seeing just like how many and what was it? I want to say it was Value Metal Battle with like the heavy metal like a literal metal band with all the low brass there. I'm like, that's awesome.
Low brass, and that was Sam Babinski's arrangement. So like
Perry Tuba, Doug's dad, right?
And then, like we had big band, we had swing. I think whatever projects use a soundtrack from that world, they always end up getting like that much easier. Like, if you told me cover Airman right now, I could try like 1,000 genres because there's a simple melody and like some chords and that's it. But if someone's like, hey, like Elden Ring's theme, it's like, oh, well, there's a lot of lead lines here. There's like strings. There's, it becomes harder and harder. So you spend more time like on that. But nothing's impossible. I'm not gonna
for sure.
I'm not gonna broad brush be like, no, it's stupid. But yeah.
I'm excited to see what you and the rest of like the staff, the Game Grooves staff team comes up with, because that sounds really, really cool.
I definitely can't really gauge, but it's an if and when. But also, I want to see more folks inspired by it, and also taking to a lot of like the lessons learned that Laura shared, of course, because there's been a lot of really great group projects, but the fact that the Paper Mario had like a 50% non-male goal kind of thing. Like, we had a really strong like strive to balance out every aspect of it, musically, instrumentally, videos should be different each time. Like, that's, I think, one of the things I want to. Smash collab was a really great one, and I haven't seen too many for like general, but like the FF14 collabs, like we brought up with Husky, like I just want to see more and more. And then I want to see them take forever so that they like end up really crazy and everyone actually has the time to watch through the whole thing and make it like spectacle. And
Yeah, because I remember Jack Harvey's Undertale medley. That was a really cool project.
I think that was one where it was like almost a halfway, if I recall. Like, hey, you choose the song and also kind of arrange it. And it reminded me. I don't know if you knew CS Guitar 89.
I don't think I'm familiar with that name. That must be before my time.
Yeah, so he was. I think his channel was up around 2010 through. Like, it's not.
Oh like yeah, well before my time.
Yeah, he's like definitely one of the earliest influences. A lot of people I know. Many of his influences have like also not posted a lot of VGM in a while, but he had one of the first contest kind of group lab things.
Oh, okay.
Where he would play the backing track to the Mario 60 file select, and just mass invited what ended up being a lot of people. So it's probably like 40 people. But back then,
that's insane for the time.
Yeah, and
that's for sure. That's still a lot now.
It's quite a lot. And like Jules had this great Mario medley where
I remember seeing
the
that
folks invited were able to choose a song and as many instruments as they wanted to claim they would. So I was like, I'll just do like lead guitar and make it solo-y. But some folks were like, I'll get rid of like Jules's bass and I'll play my own bass line, or come up with my own bit for this. And that I think was also a really clever
for sure, yeah.
Capitalize on the collaboration and give people arranger space, not just highlight how they are as performer. And me personally, like I want to showcase like how I and play. The guitar technique part is really. I'm not as attached to the game part and just like playing the game.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a diehard gamer. Like, don't get let me not like.
It's why we're here.
Yeah, it's very important to me. But so like, these different collaborations that can take advantage. Someone hands me sheet music that they wrote themselves and are like, just play this. I'm a little less enthused as, hey, here's what I arranged. What do you make of it?
I remember you mentioned that point, like when people ask you to play sitar and you're like, hang on, this isn't like humanly playable.
That one, it expands to other areas, but yeah, that's a really, really good point. And with that, of course, it's an instrument that I'm the only human being that I guess most people have figured.
Yeah, I don't know anybody else who even owns one, much less knows how to play it. So
right, and again, like my knowing of how to play it is I understand the mechanics of what's going to make noise, but I haven't gotten more than maybe 4 times, maybe 3 times, including Paper Mario, of course, where someone has had like kind of the respect of understanding you're the only person who plays this very obviously culturally tied instrument. Maybe you know how this can be written and arranged better than I. And also, you play guitar for like 16 years and are clearly like that's something you're a professional at. So me asking you to play an instrument you picked up a couple of years ago and practice here, maybe not a good use of your time and all that. It's a really complex thing, and some collaborators do feel this way when it the novelty of an instrument that's just less common space. Like Michaela Miklichu is a great example. One of the best violinists I know, but a lot of the time she's been asked to play automaton, which she's also very good at and love. But I think we've talked about this because obviously you're always trying to like figure out how to have fun playing the instrument you want, but you don't want to be like pigeonholed one thing. And again, I can't even record sitar in my current place very well. So unless like it was for a game and I got to art carefully,
that makes sense to me. Yeah,
I probably would just be like, play it on guitar. I can arrange like a Carnatic inspired thing. I've offered that to some really cool composers, but they just weren't interested in that, which fair enough. But I feel like it's you're missing out a little bit. You don't co-arrange for certain contexts. Other times, like if someone wrote something and I trust them, my God, I'm not going to stray at all. Like that's what they want, or that's what they're paying me for. So again,
I do want to mention, I was actually at a JD Wins's panel at VGM Con, which is like the big band arranging one, and he and I agree with this position because I'm a rhythm section player myself. But he said your goal in writing like for like rhythm section is that you want to write something as a baseline, but you want the player to expand on that and make something better than what you write.
I like
So
the phrasing again because it's meant to be a civil perspective. Like I have so much faith in hired me or collaborated with me to write a part that I can and will enjoy playing or otherwise
for sure,
sound
yeah.
good. But what you're paying for or getting out of, if it's sheet music and you're handing it to me, you could probably have handed it to 10,000 others. So if I'm just a body and I don't need cash, then there's no reason for me to say yes if I'm not going to enjoy that part. Or again, friends are friends, it doesn't matter. But that's just my perspective again. Take advantage of no, hey, lowest expectations. And in my case, the few times people have reached out to me for like playing on games similar, yes, they know me. Yes, oftentimes I've been friends, but also like they specifically wanted my like take on how I played. That's not always what people are out there for, but I just feel like it's worth considering. Especially
Yeah,
like
I would like oh, go ahead.
no, I mean I don't get DM'd like, hey, want to collab or hey, want to play on a thing very often, even for guest solos, which I'm almost always down for if I have the time. But when when I do, those are the ones that I appreciate. I feel like a fair amount of people too.
Yeah, because like one person like I want to shout out specifically like is Shay. Like
Yeah,
whenever I hear violin, I'm like I can like whenever I hear her on a track, I can immediately go, that is Shay. That is Shay's sound. I'm happy for it. Yeah,
it's really great. If anything, that's a point I think I have to as musicians before you even like start recording, just being comfortable with your instrument. In this case, being able to tell apart your voice. I can tell Allison apart from Eric, apart from my friend Mariah, on trombone now that I've heard it enough. And stylistically, I know I play guitar. I hear. Say the same for Jack Fleegler, for Rashad E.B., and so on and so forth. And that's kind of one of the reasons I fell in love with electric guitar. Is that people had like this really great appreciation for, oh man, that Hendrix tone, like with the fuzz and like B.B. King's famous vibrato. Eddie Van Halen has the Brown sound and screaming, crunchy. So like it becomes another flavor to love. And then video game music. Come back to all that. What's the difference between Lame Genie doing I'm gonna claw your eyes out and drown? They have like just bass going on like their guttural drums during their verses. Boom. Like it's becoming a signature sound for them. And not to mention they have a fantastic guitar player too. And then you have Lacey Johnson's. You have a distinct kind of synth lead sound that now you hear that at MagFest.
Guitar queen herself.
Yeah, and you can run to it and you'll be like, I'm expecting to see one person up on that stage. And then it's a characteristic that was I feel like everyone's entitled to define that for themselves too.
For sure.
So
yeah.
I would hate if someone was just listening to me like, oh, you're the guy who does that really weird, it's like making fun of someone's laugh. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, exactly what I mean. Yeah,
it's a very personalized, but when it comes to like even production and coming back to that, like that's a characteristic too. When I think of my favorite mixes right now, oftentimes it's not in VGA necessarily, but there's like punchy qualities. There's like signature sounds. Like the bass guitar sound I have is basically completely ripped out of the hands of live bassists like Nala Get from Periphery, Amos Williams from Tesseract, and
hell yeah,
like it's very definitive to me, but it helps me also build the picture. If someone hires me for a cover or for a project or whatever, like what they're looking for, I hope that's like what they're hoping to hear in their head. And I have to post this on my second channel, but someone kindly commissioned a cover from me. I spent like
oh really?
Yeah, and it was right before I moved, so I spent like a month and a half working on the Goonies 2 soundtrack. Which
there's a second one?
Yeah, exactly, right?
I didn't know that. Okay.
The video game, not the movie. And
I didn't even know there's a Goonies video game.
so Game Grumps, this is gonna happen.
Oh.
Have played through, I think, the second one as a favorite of Dan Avidan's, but it's a great NES title. Like a lot of NES games that are just like you're never gonna have heard of them. But yeah, like
Today I learned.
it was a great chance for me to like completely remove, the Zelda of it all, the Pokemon and the famous series mentality, and just be like, all right, what can you do
for the music?
Yeah, what can you do to the soundtrack to leave your signature sound and also tribute like, the melodies there. But yeah, it's just very fun food for thought. And I know we're streaming about mixing, so I do think it's worth bringing up when I get comments about stuff like mix sounds so cool, or like, oh my god, that like it's very rare, but I take appreciation in like a food pyramid when it comes to guitar playing compliments are always at the top, and then mixing quality stuff next, video stuff is below that, and then bottom, of course. Doesn't really matter. I'm just glad someone yeah, just in terms of like the appreciation and the factors go to your I'm sure a lot of people might feel, especially when you perform in your videos or even arrangement. I like didn't even include that, but like how cleverly you twist, come up with like what if this, but drawing from that.
Yeah, I want to say like for the upcoming, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but like the upcoming ska album, like I'm like I don't know a whole lot about ska, so I'm like I'm just gonna.
I think you can generalize the upcoming ska album and be said.
I'm just gonna have people send me a bunch of stuff. I'm like, hang on, I want to rip off this band.
It's a good chance because again, like I don't know too much ska either. It was mildly popular in high school, Streetlight Manifesto specifically. So yeah, it's a good chance to just like shut brain off to everything I think that band.
For sure, yeah.
But yeah, and again, like it's still going to be a bit of your like if there was a lo-fi album, I still need to make sure like whatever I produce feels comfy, so on and so forth. God, I still need to figure out lo-fi because I have the perfect album name, and I'm just like I don't know how to write.
Is it okay? Let me take it. Is it Ro-Fi?
It's actually Ro-Fi.
Okay.
But yeah, I I want to pursue how to like while still clear that it's mine and fun to play. Yeah, Streetlight, like, and general ska has so many great and again, like horns of course are the first thing that comes to mind for me too, but it's just like a really interesting genre. It is harder to produce,
not to mention like that offbeat, like the rhythm guitar.
Yeah, it's not something that you often do outside, so it can be quite difficult to practice up. Even one thing I bring up with like thrash people and death metal, they do a lot of down picking, and prog people, of course, we have like all this like articulations and like alternate stuff. So I don't have like the arm muscle that a lot of these like metalcore people have to like just go dirt.
Oh yeah.
I'm doing dirt. Like we're doing all this math crap, and they're just like being beast mode, and yeah, like it's different muscle entirely. But yeah, at the end of all of this, of course, I'm gonna render one more.
Yeah, you gotta get to dinner soon, right?
Well, I didn't know how long this was gonna last, so I ballparked dinner being a little bit later into the evening, and now I'm getting hungry.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna poke my friend and see how early we can stretch that. Also, what did I do? Oh. So I'm gonna render this. That ever serves as one little reference for you or what have you. That can be useful. I might even share this and have like.
By all means, please do.
Yeah, this was a really cool song, a really good choice, I think, because live drums, guitar, bass, piano, nothing else to.
It's a very universal instrumentation.
Yeah, like this is if you played a live show and got your audio, this is probably actually what a lot of people would end up having. And then you would, try to work on mixing.
Mm-hmm. And like that was kind of the goal for this arranger to get this. Because like, yeah.
Like, yeah, this is Journey's configuration. This is like a lot of, just simple bands. Yeah, fill it out, and yeah, it's a really good opportunity. I apologize again for not knowing anything beyond the context of the song or anything.
No worries.
But sometimes, like normally, a lot of people will listen to the original and mix towards the original too, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I try to like unbias myself from it, just like how Sonic Adventure songs are all often rock, so it's like, what am I adding to that? Am I like forcing myself to mix towards? But those are studio recordings meant.
Mm-hmm.
I like referencing closer to like.
I remember. What was it? It was you were mentioning something about your Magfest performance. People caught my Dream Theater references, but not all of them.
Yeah, actually. And gosh, I think the main one that folks didn't get was that the entire Ganondorf was the boss fight in 25-4 that we did, was built around the Dance of Eternity track, which is a 6-minute instrumental that is extremely difficult, extremely awesome.
I believe it. 25-4 is not an easy time signature.
So that was the idea. That's the original song, of course, for Ganondorf Battle. And then Dream Theater's Dance of Eternity features like a bunch of different changes, instruments, a piano solo. So we structured the order of.
All right,
this.
I'll do one last listen.
Yeah. But yeah, sometimes like it's really easy to miss anyway, and it just get away with being more creative and arranger, and no one has to know.
For sure, yeah. Like one of my favorite things to do is like, I'm just gonna rip this off.
My audience is too young to get this, so they'll just think I'm good.
But yeah, okay. I am clicking the play button for the V2.
And I'll play this back also here. I'm just Yeah, like this outro could be cool to or something. Get rid of. We don't.
But yeah, overall, well done. I really like how everything just shines. I think that's the best way I'm going to describe it.
Yeah, I think overall, like, it's a bright mix now. It still has really good control low end that like, and I'm most proud, I think, of that like impression of the bass, like the overall sound. I think ways I could improve, like you said, automation of certain parts better. Automation of reverbs. If this was on Xenoblade and you were spending extra time like automating reverbs and like maybe effect necessary. Yeah, just like with these, I think that would be that I would like necessitate
for an evening. Really dang well done.
No, I'm glad. And again, that was a lot of us talking and discussing and like sidetracking and stuff. So chat. We still have people in chat, so
any last questions?
Yeah, last questions, topics, comments on the mix. And again, both of us are in the Game Grooves Discord, where there are multiple feedback channels and tips channels, where you can also share your mixes or ask questions about production. If you're not making music and want to, and sitting on the sideline, like go to resources and stuff there. So that's that's like my plug every stream. Like I have a Discord, yeah, but also Game Grooves as a community is very helpful, especially if you like game music as a whole and want to find like collaborators.
And there's a genre for everybody. Like the fact that Game Grooves has done so many albums of different genres and showcasing everybody's different stylistics and stuff.
Now we've original music as a avenue. Today, the besides the project, just
it's really good. I recommend listening to it. It's very, very good.
Any plans on doing Xenosaga Gear? I'm gonna delegate that one to you. I have plans.
I unfortunately am not a Xenosaga or Gears. My roommates are actually the ones playing through. They played Xenogears and they're currently playing through Xenosaga. I don't see myself getting involved, partially because the games look a little dated. I'm not gonna lie. So, but yeah. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to say no. I think Xenosaga.
I only know about Gear because of there's a lot of fans of.
It looks like all three of them were 2002 to 2006.
So PS2.
PS2, yeah. And I never grew up with a PlayStation, so
I pretty much missed a lot of those, and I did my catch up on games. So, yeah, and as far as me, I think I've crossed paths with people who have covered like Xenogears for like albums here and there, and like again, covers can exist in styles that I like, even if I don't know the material, which is fun. So I always like that. My to-do list right now is surprisingly stacked with collaborations or working on things. So I don't think I'll be doing any of that. But my easiest plug is my original song Monsoon that I played at VGMCon is being mixed by Trey Watson. They are amazing.
Yes, they are.
Stupid good. But I have to make a music video for that, and I need it to rain, but not rain so much that it. So I'm waiting to do that. I've got a collab with.
Are you gonna take out like your low end beater guitar for that video? Probably.
Because the song is like my one original. I have to use that bossy, but I don't want to get it wet. I'm gonna try to.
Yeah, that is a conundrum. I'm
gonna try some. It's like spray water on this, and then stand under shade, but then have light drizzle. But yeah, working on that. I have a collab with someone in the area ish that I'm really excited about. It's a remake of a cover from 2015 of mine. I teased.
Oh wow!
I teased a photo.
10 years.
It's Pokemon, but it's not a mainline. It's not a game. How about that? It's Pokemon, but
okay. Is it like for the anime or something like that?
Something like that.
Okay.
So I'm really excited about that. The other Hades song, Allison's working on tracking vocals. So we should have that. And that one, has like some really gnarly slap bass on there that I invented up for it, so I'm excited.
Oh heck yeah.
Then yeah, the band is playing in California in August. We'll be at Brew Game Plus. I'm working on my set list for that, but I want to keep it kind of fun, rocky. We're gonna have the Harry Wood on bass.
Oh heck yeah, that's awesome.
Cali native, so West Coast band. So I'm gonna prep that up more. I don't know if we'll get to like film it or whatever. One other show that I'm hoping works out soon because wacky set list possible. Yeah, it's been interesting doing so much more live music than ever because this is like a record year. I usually do one show a year. Usually have like an official Magfest show.
But now that you know so many people in the Seattle area.
Yeah, well, I don't know when I'll get to. Oh, I might be performing in Seattle area, not as myself, but with friends. So
okay, yeah,
good enough.
Which is still fun in itself. That's for.
Yeah, like learning other people's parts and kind of just focusing on playing tightly, having fun, like stage energy. It's a really good. Excited about all that stuff. And otherwise, yeah, I've just been editing for other people a lot of stuff. Oh, Rahul, you're at the end of the stream. This is our one overlap of time zone. I hope you're doing well. But yeah, I'm gonna post the finished, or you can share it, Sean, through your track. But you're welcome to share that anywhere in Game Grooves or my Discord for folks who want to check it out. But yeah, we mixed live drums, mixed bass, piano, different guitars all together into a wonderful, beautiful layer. I would love to do this again. So again, in Discord, if you thought this was cool or if you think I should bring up different kind of genre, maybe we can get some more friends up, kind of walk through mixing. We'll do this again. I think I'm planning on having another friend join me soon for Twitch feedback streams, and she is an incredible force to be reckoned with to performance, arranging, and videography. Oh, I mean, there, I think everyone already be. We'll figure out when that happens soon, but otherwise, take care. Thank you again, Sean. Thanks everyone who stuck around chat.
Thank you, Ro, for hosting me on here. This was a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, happy Friday, everybody. Go play Dawn Trail or whatever.